I'm not so sure whether she was deported or whether she actually fled the country. These are the exact words of President Akufo-Addo when he was asked about the resurfacing of Galamsey kingpin Aisha Huang into the country. Well, the notorious Chinese national who was deported in 2018, well, at least that is what we were made to believe at the time, was arrested in Ghana under a new identity, which is N. Huang. She is facing currently charges of mining and engaging in state sale and purchase, actually, of minerals without a valid license. But then the big question on our lips this afternoon is, was Aisha Huang really deported back in 2018, as many of us knew it? Here's President Akufo-Addo admitting that he simply doesn't know about her status in an interview on a Ho-based radio station, Stone City FM.
First of all, it's now a subject of national discussion.
Okay.
Everywhere you go, this matter of Galamsey will at least achieve that purpose of heightening consciousness about it as an evil. When I came, nobody was talking about Galamsey. Since we came and focused on it, it is now the subject of discussions in homes, in offices, in meetings all across Ghana. So that's one very positive development. Secondly, many of the measures that have been put in place are yielding fruit. The community mining schemes that are being established across the country systematically are being rolled out. The efforts there are to keep our waters clean have not succeeded in their entirety, but some measurable increase in performance there is also taking place. Generally, you can see that, yes, there will be sensational cases, and the matter is not over. The Aisha Huang is a sort of, has become a short form for everything to do with, especially, unfortunately, with the involvement of foreigners, especially Chinese, in these illicit and dangerous acts in our country. But I'm persuaded that much of the work that is being done, and a lot of these things are going on without too much publicity, is gradually yielding results. When you have a situation like this woman who was, I'm not still sure whether she was in fact deported or whether she fled the country the first time and has now come back, but whatever. There still seems to be some uncertainty about it. But whichever way it is, she has become the sort of nickname for all that the Galamsey represents. And unfortunately, also for the involvement of Chinese nationals in Ghana in this particular illicit trade. We have constantly to work at it. We need to have the cooperation of the courts. Until recently, till I came, the punishment for people caught was relatively light, a fine, and even if we're going to go to custodial sentences, was relatively minimal. We've changed the law to stiffen the punishments for people caught. For foreigners, I think it's now 15 to 25 years, depending on the severity of what it is. So we're also now going to test our judicial system, to what extent it is going to be responsive, especially when somebody like her goes on to trial. But I'm persuaded that the fight is in the right place. It's not an easy fight. You can see in the last election, the concerted efforts that the Galamsey community made to try and turn us out of office because of our fight. Fortunately, the good people of Ghana decided otherwise. But it shows you the extent to which this fight is biting. People made these desperate efforts to throw out the party they thought was spearheading the anti-Galamsey fight.
Well, I'm sure that you have many questions after listening to the president there, but the minority is beginning to react to this. Let's cross you over now to New York. Joining us via Zoom is James Agalga, his ranking member on the Defense and Interior Committee, joining us to also share his comments on this. In fact, what's your initial reaction, first of all, having heard about the circumstances surrounding her departure, at least in 2018 as we know it? The impression under which many of us were, was that this was the lady who threatened territorial integrity, and as a result was deported. But the president is not sure. So do you have any official records, at least from your committee side, on what the status was in 2018, James?
I am indeed very surprised that the president, who is the chairman of the National Security Council, is now telling us that he is not too sure whether the lady in question was deported or not. Look here, as the chairman of the National Security Council, the president receives security briefings regularly, even on a daily basis, if he's in the country, by the National Intelligence Bureau, by the Minister for the Interior, and even by the military intelligence. And so whether or not the lady was deported from this country in 2018 is a matter that the president should be versed with. And so for the president to say he is not too sure clearly shows that this is a president who is not on top of the security issues of his country. And yet he's the chairman of the National Security Council. This is very worrying. And for me, I would say, without any fear of contradiction, that the president clearly is incompetent and is not on top of the security issues of our country. That is very dangerous, especially given the fact that we now live in an era where we are saddled with several security issues, threat of terrorism. If the president is not on top of the security issues of our country, and then it means that we're in deep trouble.
Okay, well, some may say this is your personal opinion and readings into what the performance of the president has been. But of course, you are public officers as well as members of parliament serving on the Interior and Defense Committee. Back in 2018, this matter was very topical. So I'm sure that you had some briefing, at least if not from the Ghana Police Service. You may be having some briefings from National Security, either through the minister or whichever respective agency you are dealing with. What was the status?
Yes.
What was the status of Aisha Huang in 2018, and what decision was taken on her at the time?
So what we do know is that the minister responsible for the Interior signed a deportation warrant, or if you like, order, which was carried through by the Comptroller General of the Ghana Immigration Service. I have personally cited some documents signed by.
I'm sorry for cutting through, but I'm sorry for cutting through. But you're telling us now that you've seen a deportation warrant at the time in 2018, with President Akufo-Addo then being the chair of the National Security Council, that this lady in question was supposed to have been deported. Did you follow up to see if indeed she was deported?
Well, if the president, the man responsible for the overall security of our country, is now casting doubt on the validity of the deportation orders that I have seen, then of course I would tell you for a fact that I'm left in a state of confusion, because as head of our country's security, the chairman of the National Security Council, who must receive security briefings from all the security agencies of our country, if he comes out and says something which seeks to contradict what I have cited, then of course, like I said before, I am left in a total state of confusion. And this is a matter that is of concern to me, because here we are talking about the chairman of our National Security Council. He should be on top of security issues. And therefore, if he casts doubt on what I have seen before, then who am I to say I am not confused? But once again, that brings to the fore the kind of manager we have over our national security affairs.
But I guess you've been repetitive on that point, but knowing who Aisha Huang is, at least from sources and what they're telling us, this appears to be a very powerful foreign national, Chinese for that matter. We're told that she is in possession of some sex videos of the political class. We're not told if it's just from the NPP or the New Patriotic Party. So it appears that we're dealing with a very powerful force in the country, isn't it?
Well, I am not in a position to speak to those issues, but what is most important for me is the president's take on the question of whether or not she was deported from this country.
Yeah, but the question about the personality, you do agree would matter, because this is someone we're told you, the politicians, are not able to crack down on. Because mind you, Aisha Huang has been in this country dating way before 2018 when that deportation notice was given. She was around when, for instance, you were in power then as the National Democratic Congress.
You want us to discuss the performance of the NDC with respect to the fight against Galamsey?
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I'm talking about the personality.
I would tell you.
Yeah.
I would tell you. Mm-hmm. I would tell you that NDC did its part. During our tenure, we deported close to 5,000 Chinese nationals from our country. And the fact of deportation of the number I am talking about was not in question. The chairman of the Security Council at the time was not in doubt as to whether the close to 5,000 Chinese citizens they left our country's shores or not. He was very certain and clear in his mind that his anti-Galamsey task force, which was led by the Minister for Lands and Forestry at the time, carried through his orders. But we are now talking about a president who is not certain whether a certain deportation order was carried through or not. And you want us to engage in a game of comparison?
Not exactly. Not exactly my objective. It's just about.
Let us not shift the goalposts. Mm-hmm. I am saying that we now have a president who has demonstrated how incompetent he is when it comes to managing our country's security, to the extent that he cannot even be sure whether what his heads of security agencies have put out there in the public domain with respect to the deportation of this lady is true or not. He's put all of us in a state of doubt. So let's not go back and say under the NDC era, right. Please, those comparisons will simply not work. Well, let us deal with the issue unfolded before our eyes.
I get you. But of course, you were in charge of Interior, and so you were receiving a lot of intelligence reports to give you that sense of who we're dealing with here. Aisha Huang, as we're being told. In fact, I need to point out that Adib San is a security analyst. He will be joining the conversation shortly. But I want to find out from you one more time, James Agalga, about the processes in Parliament and what you intend to do about this. Knowing now that, of course, you cited that document, issuing the deportation notice, and yet we're not sure, in the words of the president, if that was carried out. What do you intend to do as minority in Parliament, especially from the side of the committee in charge of Interior and Defense?
As you can see, we are on recess at the moment. That is why I am in New York to attend some of the proceedings at the General Assembly. Definitely, when Parliament reconvenes, these are very serious issues. Just before I departed for New York, we had some engagements with the security services under our jurisdiction. We did some budget performance review, and some of these matters came to the fore. Like I said before, the Immigration Service itself made it very clear that some deportation order was carried through. But like I said before, the president has now thrown or cast doubt into what we were told by way of our briefings by the Ministry of the Interior. And so we would want to probe deep into these matters and satisfy ourselves that what we heard from the Ministry of the Interior and its agencies when they appeared before the committee was indeed true.
We've heard from the likes of former President John Dramani Mahama, who happens to be your 2020 flag bearer. He says the president has, in fact, lost the fight, not just against corruption, but against illegal mining. Do you share the same concerns in Parliament as well?
Of course, yes. The former president made it very clear that the president put his own presidency on the line, and he did state that if he, President Akufo-Addo, were to fail in his fight against Galamsey, he would resign. Because that is how we understood him when he said categorically that he was going to put his presidency on the line.
He made the statements in his first term. What would you say? He made these statements in his first term. What would you say to someone who walks up to you and say, well, that social contract has ended? He's now in the second term. At least we've never heard him, not even at the time he was being sworn in for the second time, say that, well, I'm putting my presidency on the line for this.
The point I'm seeking to make is that there are functionaries of the president's government who are neck deep involved in the Galamsey menace. We saw videos out there, these videos of Charles Bisu receiving money, and this was an individual who worked from the presidency. Nothing happened to him. There are allegations of government functionaries, an MPP women's organizer who was engaged in Galamsey activities. Her machinery, or if you like, equipment, were burnt. Beyond the burning, what happened to the lady in question? Absolutely nothing. So the point I'm making is that the president is simply paying lip service to the fight against Galamsey because there are some of the people who are involved in the menace in his government. And he just can't take action against them because they are his own people. So the fight against Galamsey is a flop. And like the former president said, in some other countries, the president would have done the honorable thing by resigning. But listen to him. When he talks about
you want the president to resign?
Galamsey, I mean,
you want the president to resign?
Of course, he should do the honorable thing because he put his presidency on the line. When evidence started emerging of certain individuals within his own government, neck deep involved in Galamsey-related activities, he should have taken decisive action. Remember the issue of the Central Regional Chairman of the MPP, Akufo-Addo, who was responsible for the missing excavators. What happened to Akufo-Addo? Is it because he was regional chairman of the MPP? The women's organizer of that party was caught red-handed. Her equipment burnt. What happened to her? Charles Bisu, what happened to him? So the president clearly has not been able to cleanse his own house of the Galamsey menace. And I can understand because these are members of his party leadership. That is why he just can't bite. So when he comes out there and says he's serious about the fight against Galamsey, I mean, the president's are tight and he's a major flop.
Okay, James Agala, just hold on for me. Let me bring in Adib Sani now. He's a security analyst. Adib, and we're being told by the president now that he's not sure if indeed Aisha Huang was deported. Contrary to the reports that we've been receiving, I guess this goes to the heart of the reports that came through from the small-scale miners, indicating that she's been with us for the past 2 years, or even more.
Well, first of all, let me say a very good morning to Honorable Agaga. In the part of the world he finds himself, I'm sure it's morning.
Yes.
Morning. All right, so when I heard about what the president said, I couldn't believe it. So I had a media source send me the video, and one word can best describe what I heard. I was absolutely gobsmacked. It is no accident the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. What in essence it means is the president is the #1 protector and defender of the very territorial integrity of Ghana. And so when things of these goes wrong, it is him we blame because constitutionally he is supposed to ensure that you and I are able to go to bed with our 2 eyes closed. Unfortunately, The president is not even sure whether indeed this lady in question was deported or not, when the whole country was deceived, perhaps, into thinking that she was deported. In fact, I heard it from a number of sources that it is likely this lady wasn't deported, as we were made to believe. And so this cast a very dark shadow over our fight against Galamsey and whether indeed we would ever succeed. I am a project manager. I don't believe in how much you've spent on a project. I don't believe in the number of resources you've put into it. I don't believe in Operation Vanguard and all that. I believe in outcomes. To what end? So if you do all of this and still you go out there and they are still engaging in that activity, would you say you've succeeded?
Some would say...
So we have a lot of questions that has to be answered.
Some would argue that in spite of all the criticisms against the president for this very comment, his Attorney General, Godfred Dami, is indeed going ahead with prosecutions dating back to 2018 in terms of the charges that were leveled against her. So the rule of law may work in the end, regardless of whatever the president may be saying at this point.
The rule of law hasn't worked in 1,000 cases. I'm hoping this time around is good. So I'm going to take them by their words. In the past, we've had hundreds and hundreds of Chinese citizens arrested at mining sites. Today, when Manasseh Azure wrote through the RTI to the prison service, for how many Chinese were in Ghana's jail? The whole of Ghana's prison system, only 2, and we don't know whether it is even associated with Galamsey or not. So what happened to these individuals? And this also adds to existing suspicions over whether indeed these individuals are not the same recycled back into the system. We arrest them, we claim we deport them, then the same individuals are found in these communities. So the probability that they are being recycled into the system is very high. And it makes me wonder whether indeed someone is sleeping on the job or someone is deliberately complicit in this whole idea. Now, we have a president who is not even aware. Meanwhile, the president, by the way, receives daily security briefing. No matter where he is.
Yeah, but why not hold to account? We're not sure of what the details may be, because normally that doesn't happen where you have details of that briefing being put out in the public space. So we're not sure if this is exactly the president's fault or that of the security chiefs. Who should be paying the price here?
Well, for a high-profile case like that of Aisha Huang, which got the whole country talking, which made it to international news, and that got a senior minister at that time asking how it would benefit Ghanaians if she is arrested or prosecuted, I would expect the president to know. I mean, a president who cares about the people should know the price of an olunka of tomatoes on the market today. Okay? I mean, that might sound funny, but he is supposed to know. Okay, so I think that it's either the president is nonchalant or his security managers are not doing a great job. And so this whole thing should go beyond Aisha Huang. I would wish to see not just Aisha Huang getting prosecuted, but a more holistic investigation, sort of an inquiry done into the circumstance behind her re-entry into the country, how she managed to even get a Ghana card despite the fact that it's biometric in nature and all that. So we need to open we should cast the net wide. And also because this has a direct correlation with our efforts, with our fight against terrorism. So if we are not able to detect an individual like Aisha Huang, how would we be able to detect terrorists, which is even much more laborious to do?
And in fact, why are we facing this difficulty in terms of dealing with the foreign nationals who may be engaged in illegal mining? It's as simple as that. They're not even our citizens, so dealing with them should be, or should have been, much more easier.
Complicity. As simple as that. I mean, when you hear people talking about official complicity, they are right. Like Honorable rightly mentioned, we saw it. Everybody saw it. Someone supposed to ensure Galamsey doesn't happen, taking bribes, and he's still on the job. So, it amazes me when people come out to say we are committed, yet their actions doesn't show they are committed.
Okay.
So if we are able to break that jinx, that complicity bit of it, I'm sure we should be doing a great deal of job.
Well, thanks, Adib. This is a bigger conversation we need to look at, the issue about the holistic fight against the illegal mining. The president has adopted some radical approach. First of all, it was about banning of excavators and then the deployment of foot on the ground. But for you, James Agalga, what should be changing now about our approach? It seems not to have been working all over these years. James Agalga,
I think
yes.
The government. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
I think the government needs to be proactive. They should start by looking within, get rid of the characters who are neck deep involved in Galamsey activities, but in one way or the other have found their way into government's inner circles. For me, that is the starting point. When government is able to rid itself of the elements involved in Galamsey from within, then we would be able to tackle the problem head on from without. So those who have infiltrated our country, we can then deal with them in a more decisive way. Not until we tackle the problem from within, trust me, there would be collusion here and there, and that would make the fight against Galamsey very, very difficult. I recall how some people dressed in military uniform actually went after members of Operation Vanguard when they uncovered some mining site within reserve in their region. Were promised that some investigations would be carried out to determine the true identities of the men who were spotted in military uniform. Once again, nothing came out of that investigation. That is why I'm saying there are elements from within the government itself who are neck deep involved in the Galamsey enterprise. And not until we get rid of those characters, the fight against Galamsey is going to be an illusion.
Yeah, but mind you, the president is still keeping the soldiers on the ground just to check issues of the pollution of our water bodies. So what do we do with the men that we're deploying, given the fact that you feel that the radical approach is not working?
Well, those who have been deployed, it appears, are not allowed to work without the usual interferences from the political elite. And that is the problem, which is why I believe the best way or approach to deal with the menace is for government to rid itself of those characters who are neck deep involved in the menace. If they're able to do that, and you deploy the security agencies, including the military, and they know their mandate is to flush out those involved in the exercise, or if you like, Galamsey menace, we would begin to get some results.
In fact, you may criticize him for making those statements, but then it's a very important time for us to look at the call by the senior minister, Yao Safumafo, for us to focus on rather building ourselves and not necessarily being fixated on the likes of Aisha Huang. For those who do not have that picture in mind, try and paint it to us. What's the implication to national security if Aisha Huang is simply put behind bars? I mean, what do we gain from this? I guess that's the position of the senior minister on this.
Well, we're talking about Galamsey, and so I do not think that the pollution of our water bodies and what you see, the destruction of even forest reserves. We are told that we are now left with less than 1 million hectares of forest. Cocoa farms are being planted and so on. I don't think that we can attribute this to one person, Aisha Huang. I don't think so. Which is why I am saying that we need to have a broader discussion to try to unravel why the security apparatus, Operation Vanguard, has so far failed us. What are the causes? And I am saying that, look, we need to look within because the evidence abounds. Excavators seized, and a certain Eko Awisi is responsible for the custody of them. The next moment, all 500 excavators are missing, and yet nothing happens. You see somebody from within the presidency receiving bribes. He's captured on camera. Nothing happens. A women's organizer is involved, is caught. All we see is that some equipment belonging to that person are bent. And that is the end of story.
Okay, because we don't have...
means is that
Right, but because we don't have all of the time, I just want you to wrap up with me on this. There are two options for government now: to continue with the criminal prosecution, which may take a very long time in the view of some experts, not at least finishing that in this year. And the
enterprise.
Yes, but James Agalga, if you can hear me now, let's wrap up on the issue, the options available to government. The choice to either continue with the prosecution, criminal prosecution, dating back to 2018, or to deport her immediately. If government had the options on the table right now, I mean, before the president, what would you advise from the position of the minority?
Well, I wouldn't advise the president. I don't have that capacity. The Attorney General, in whom the prosecutorial powers of the state are vested, has spoken. He says he's going to prosecute the matter. I would rather adopt a wait-and-see attitude. Let's see how the prosecution fares, but we must caution that the rights of the accused, and that is a constitutional injunction, it must be respected. Let the trial, commence, and let's see how the state would fare. That is all I would say for now. But nobody, it's not even the president, can direct the Attorney General on how to proceed with the exercise of his prosecutorial powers under Article 88 of the Constitution. So, knowing full well what that means, and as a lawyer myself, I am not going to pretend that I have the capacity to advise the Attorney General as to how to proceed.
Do you feel the comments of the president would dampen the spirit of the Attorney General?
Well, the president's comments should be viewed from the security point of view, which may not have a direct bearing on the work of the Attorney General. As the chairman of the National Security Council, and of course, my brother Sani Adib added another dimension. He doubles as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of our country. It is really unfortunate and sad that our president is not on top of our security. And that, for me, is something that needs to be watched carefully.
Anyway, we need to leave it here. James Agalga, a member of the Defense and Interior Committee. In fact, there's more on illegal mining because the...